Today's guest is a powerhouse in the SLP world. Amanda Donaldson is the founder of CommuniCAN Speech Therapy, a thriving mobile and telehealth private practice built on the belief that everyone can communicate. She's not only a dedicated clinician with experience across settings and age ranges, but also a mentor, business coach, and the creator of the Confident SLP Handbook. From working 7 days a week to going all in on her dream, Amanda's journey is all about grit, purpose, and helping others find their voice, both literally and professionally. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course, I'm so excited to have you as well, Amanda. Amanda, we have something in common. We both graduated from Marywood University.
Yes, we did.
So we
Pacers.
both have that little bit of history together. But even before Marywood University, how did you realize that you wanted to become an SLP?
Yeah, so I think for me, it always started probably always back into like middle school, high school, back my teenage years. I loved babysitting. I loved just being around kids, camp counselor. Even as an early child, young child, I played school in my basement. I had the pretend chalkboard or whiteboard or whatever. And I always wanted to be a teacher and I knew I wanted to work with kids. And, going through high school, when we started looking at colleges, my parents kind of pointed out like the pros and cons of being a teacher with the full class size, and then the pay and different things like that. And my mom reminded me of my in-home speech therapist who came to work on, the dreaded R and S and L, the main culprits. And so it was back then that I was kind of like, I could still work in a school, I could still work with kids, but kind of make more of a direct one-on-one individual difference and still have the opportunity to work with kids. So that's kind of how I realized it. It did have a direct impact on my life and it still let me work with kids.
Yeah, I resonate with that story myself. So kind of the aha moment for you was speaking with your parents and having some talks with them. And then you realized right out of high school, it seems.
Yeah, it was like junior year of high school, kind of when we were
Cool.
looking and trying to narrow it down of, there's so many schools out there and just trying to
Yeah.
figure out that area for college and exactly where I wanted to be. And yeah, it was junior year of high school for me that I decided that this was the field I wanted to be in.
Awesome. Awesome. So then you went to college, you graduated. What was your CF experience like? What's that first job like?
Yeah, so my CF experience was honestly probably a lot different than a lot of people.
Okay.
I graduated from Marywood, as you said, and 2 months later, I moved across the country. So I graduated, I moved out with nothing. I still remember to this day, my mom and I showed up at the airport, had a couple suitcases. We had a car service drive us to the car dealership where my new car was waiting and literally picked up a car, went to get my apartment keys. Like I moved out here with basically nothing. So it was a
Wow.
lot because then I started my CF and I was in the schools. I knew no one. I didn't know how to get anywhere. It was a whole new learning curve, but I was in the schools. I worked at a Title I school,
Okay.
which kind of just basically is lower income. I had a lot being in Phoenix, Arizona, a lot of Spanish speaking families at that school. So it was a challenging CF because although they were in ESL, English second language learners, I had a lot of kids that just struggled speech and language development wise because of diagnoses and then also some of that language aspect with the second language as well. So it was a challenging first year, but my CF mentor was fantastic and I absolutely loved her. So that was great. I also had a wide range at that school of needs. I had a kindergartner using eye gaze at that school, which is
Wow.
pretty uncommon, fresh out of grad school and just throw me knee deep into using eye gaze. Obviously, I had some AAC as well. No mobility and eye gaze was where I started with at one school. It was tricky, but I learned so much, and I had a great psychologist at that school who I worked with. It was really a wide range of opportunities.
Yeah, and a good team around you can make all the difference too. So it's good to hear that you had that for your CF year.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
can't
And I
imagine.
was the only SLP at that school. I
Wow.
had an SL, I had, there was an SLPA, but she mostly worked in the preschool. So it was
Okay.
mostly just me, but I did share a room with the occupational therapist who had been there, oh, I don't know, probably like 30, 40 years. So that was also kind of nice to have that as well.
Right, right. Okay, so moved across the country, very ambitious. Started working at Title One school, very cool, with a kindergartner who was eye using an eye gaze. Very interesting. Not your typical CF experience. How long did you continue to work in the schools for?
Yeah, so when I moved out to Arizona, I decided not to work directly for a school district, mainly because I didn't know where in the Phoenix Valley I was going to live. So when I accepted the job, it was I think back in like February or March before I graduated college. And so I accepted a job with a contract company. And so
Mhm.
basically they were around the entire Phoenix area. So I told them what city I was living in and they found me a district. So with that,
Mhm.
I wasn't always placed back at the same school. I had the choice to, but I wasn't. So after my CFY, I said, if you want to put me at the same school, that's fine, but I'm also more than open to trying something new. I'd like to try new schools. So I went to a different school within the same district, and that school was night and day different. I had a fantastic experience at that school. Part of me wishes I stayed at that school, to be completely honest, but I didn't. And after that year, I went to another school. And after that year, I went to another school. So I hopped around schools for 4 years. And that last school I was at, that fourth year, I stayed at for another half a year. And then after that half a year, I left and came to my business full time. And part of the reason I left was honestly the team. The psychologist was not my best friend, and the paperwork was just getting a lot. And at the time, I was also, which I'm sure we'll get to later, but I was also working other jobs and had my own business client. 7 days a week of work was just too much. So I knew it was time to get out. Well, yeah, 4.5 years in the schools, different schools, which honestly to new grads, I highly recommend doing just so you can experience different settings, different populations. Some schools will have more of those self-contained populations and some won't. So it was a great opportunity to try different things.
Yeah, awesome. And then at what point did you start working for yourself with CommuniCAN?
So I launched CommuniCAN in September 2019. So I
Mhm.
graduated with my master's in 2017. It was about 2 years after graduation that I launched CommuniCAN. And CommuniCAN, I was originally just seeing clients on Saturdays. So I
Okay.
just picked up a couple clients here and there on Saturdays. And it was just kind of a side gig thing. And then it eventually kept growing a little bit more, a little bit more. Um, and then picked up more on Saturdays and Sundays, and then still working in the schools Monday to Friday, clients Saturday, Sunday. Then I was seeing a couple clients after school during the week. I had two after school clients. So then it was getting to be a lot. And I had inquiries keeping on coming, and I said, okay, maybe it's time to make that jump. So I did.
Yeah, wow. What a journey. It sounds like you were completely booked. So really cool that you're able to start small and then grow it to a point where you're able to be, I guess, confident in knowing that you were able to have those referrals. Was that something
Right.
that really helped, like that confidence that you knew those referrals were going to come in so that you could support a business?
Yeah, and I think that's definitely it, is it's slow at first to kind of get your name out there. I mean, for me, my biggest thing was Google Ads, and I lived on Google Ads, and that's how I got a lot of mine. Obviously now, the longer I've been in business, I get a lot of word of mouth referrals as well, which is obviously great. But just kind of like waiting for those referrals, knowing it's okay to have a little bit of a wait list to then grow that wait list so that you can make that jump. And it's a scary jump at first because you don't have everything full, but knowing that it will come over time.
Right, right. And what's your model that you guys follow? Is it brick and mortar, virtual? Is it in home?
Yeah, so we are fully in home. We do some virtual, mainly if it's like location based too far out of our travel radius. Or during COVID, we did some other virtual sessions, obviously, with health guidelines and things like that. But we are fully mobile. We've been mobile since we started almost 6 years ago. So Parents love it. There's definitely pros and cons to each. Obviously being mobile means drive time for us, and it means potentially traffic or road closures or, the inevitable. But it also means I love that time, honestly. I initially hated it. And don't get me wrong, there's certain days that I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to be in a clinic building. I don't want to be in my car anymore. But then I think, and like I talk to friends who work in a clinic, and they are back to back 30-minute sessions for like 6 or 7 hours with no break. Maybe like 30 minutes to eat lunch or like 2 minutes to go to the bathroom, right? For
Yep.
me, I have maybe 10, 20 minutes on average. I would say 15, 20 minutes is my average between clients to reset.
Right.
And sometimes my car is silent. Sometimes I don't turn on a podcast. I don't turn on music. I don't turn on anything. I just sit and be. And like for me, that's my mental reset time. I like reflect on my previous session and think about my next session. Because in the SLP world, we all know, let's be real, we don't have a lot of prep time. We don't have a lot of planning time. Sometimes that is my prep time. Like
Yeah.
sometimes that is like, this is what I'm going to do with this child today. Great idea. So like, honestly, that's like my me time and decompression. Sometimes if it's a 30-minute drive, I call a friend, and like, who gets to call their friend in the middle of a work day, or look, there's the UPS store. I have to take this back. Let me make a real quick stop. So sometimes it's not as bad as people think. And obviously the pros of being able to be in home, work with the child in the natural environment. You don't waste 5 minutes at the start of every session like, hey, this is the speech room. And the child's like wandering around like, oh, where am I? What is this place? Like they're in their home, and you can also use their toys, their materials for carryover. So then they know, oh, this is what we did in speech with this toy. Let's try this at home with this toy. So there's definitely pros and cons to a lot of it. Honestly, I don't know if I will go brick and mortar one day. I might open up a small thing for clients who are out of travel radius, but I don't see my clients that I have now being like, oh, I don't want in home. I want to come to your clinic. I don't see that happening.
Right.
So
Right.
I think part of my appeal is that I'm in home because that's what sets me apart.
Yeah, I love that. And there's so much, as you said, so much that you can do in home with the parents, and it's so functional. The kids
Right.
already have what they need in home, and you can work with those things and have that carryover is what kind of makes it all work, right? Like that's kind of the
Right.
magic behind the carryover. So that's really cool that that's working for you. And that's kind
Yeah.
of what your parents are wanting as well. So that's
And
awesome.
sometimes even like a sibling comes in, and
Right.
I mean, like I won't let them interfere with actual therapy, but on a break we'll play a game. Like they can take turns and play a game with us, and it motivates the kid because they're like, I want Sissy to play. Like, okay, sure, here we go, let's go. So then the parents like, okay, I'm gonna go like read a book and quiet for a little bit. I'm like, sure, go for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a huge pro, and I think it's a huge pro for you because you're taking advantage of the travel time to decompress and all of that. But then also as a huge pro as the parent who doesn't have to drive. And then also a huge pro for this individual, the student
Right.
that we're working with, the child that we're working with, to have that carryover and that, functional learning in their home. I think is really cool. So what have you learned from being a private practice owner outside of the traveling?
Yeah, I think just like the flexibility, and also the obviously in the schools you have the wide array, as I kind of already mentioned, but just like the array of what you can work with and what you can do, and how it doesn't have to be super strict or cookie cutter. You don't have to sit at a table, at a desk. Um, I have a kid, remember I live in Phoenix, Arizona, so it's hot. It's
Mm.
110. So like, yeah, so there's days that we don't go outside, but there's
Mm.
days in like April where it was like in the 90s and the kid wanted to be outside. We sat on the edge of the pool. We put our feet in the water and
Mhm.
did speech on the side of the pool, and the kid loved it. And so just being able to do that kind of thing where the kid has some different sensory inputs from that. They then go on the trampoline, they go on the swing, like different things like that in their backyard. And just being a private practice owner and being able to think outside of the box, I think is the biggest thing. And being able to meet the child where they are, where there are no limits. And that's another perk of being in home. There are really no limits. You're at their house. You could go outside. I had a session the other day where we did an activity for speech because the kid doesn't do well sitting at a table. We did a speech, a different goal in each different room of the house. We sat on the floor in the kitchen and we worked on R. We sat in the living room and worked on S. Like, we just moved around the house, and he had to go find the next color in the rainbow. And that's how we did it. It was like a little scavenger hunt game. And he loved it. And it kept him engaged and moving and compliant in his work. So I think that's something of just, thinking outside the box as a therapist perspective, as a private practice. Obviously, as the owner, there's a whole bunch of different things that come with that, right? Paperwork, not so nice clients if something doesn't go their way, and dealing with all of that. I don't take any insurance. I am private pay only. And I think that is also a big thing for anyone wanting to start their private practice. You don't have to have a brick and mortar setting. You don't have to take insurance. I'm doing this full time. I don't have either. I don't do either. So you don't have to. And if you don't take insurance, paperwork doesn't have to take a long time. I think especially coming from the schools where you're inundated with paperwork, like being a private practice owner, you realize how much more time you can dedicate to the children without having to sit behind a computer and do paperwork. Most of my session notes I do in the session, and I'm done at the end of the day. The only thing I no longer do in sessions is the subjective part of writing how well the client behaves, because I started doing that, and as soon as I finish the paragraph, the kid starts acting up. So I've said no more. That's the only part I don't do, because I kid you not, it never fails. Every time I'm like, okay, we only have 5 minutes left. There's nothing that can go wrong. He throws something, she throws something, she hits. Like, it never fails. So no more. But just like having just freedom and flexibility, and knowing that if you dream it and you want it, you can get it. And just whatever you want your goal to be, you can make it.
Yeah, I love that. The destiny's in your own hands in your setting. So I think that's really cool. And none of us became a speech therapist so that we could sit behind a computer and do paperwork. So I think it's really cool that you're able to spend more of your time working with the students hands-on and less doing paperwork. I think all of us would appreciate that.
Yeah.
So awesome. Awesome.
When I started, some of my clients were adults. So if you're one of those speech therapists where you're like, I don't know if I want to work with kids or adults, you could work with both. Like, you could have a private practice that does both without having to have 2 jobs. Just open a private practice.
Right, exactly. Thanks for listening to part 1. Continue for part 2.